These days, bread pudding is a dessert, but in 13th century England it was a savory dish, a way to recycle stale bread and table scraps in the same way that Italians invented ravioli. It also happens to be pretty easy to make, even for novice cooks, and it can be baked in a terrine mold to produce the sort of plating element that's ideal for restaurants, because it can be cooked 95% ahead of time, and in about a minute you can have something delicate, delicious, and complex on a plate to elevate the overall composition. Extra stem. Chunks of mushroom like this. Fry the mushrooms in 2 batches, half butter, half olive oil. Then cook the onions in the same pan as the mushrooms were just cooked in. I'm using these olives from Calabria, Italy, and these are pitted, so not pitted, so I have to go through and take the pits out. This is probably the hardest part of the job in this recipe, because we need quite a few olives. Okay, beginning with a couple of egg yolks here. We add the chicken stock. This is homemade ground chicken stock, the cream. Yeah, we have the liquid ingredients in there. You can add chunks of bread. Switch tools here. You want to get these, leave these enough time to absorb that liquid. Don't just mix them together, mix all your ingredients, and then bake it right away, because otherwise you'll end up with dry, crusty bread, the parts that didn't get moist, and pools of liquid. So this is one of the keys to this, is that you have to let the bread soak up that liquid first before we continue on and add anything else. Okay, so now you can see after about half an hour, I stirred it occasionally during this time. You can see it's absorbed most of the liquid. That's what you want. You want to make sure that this bread has absorbed this before you add the other ingredients, because the other ingredients will interfere, get in the way of the bread absorbing that liquid. So now I'm going to add that, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. We've got the mushrooms and the onions that were cooked. I've got 60 grams of those Italian olives, pitted of course, and give this a stir. And of course you need to stir this well in order to evenly distribute all the ingredients. I have a triangular mold that I'm going to use for this. I'm going to put a little bit of butter in here. So the butter on the inside here is really just to keep the baking paper stuck to the inside of the mold, of course. And then I've got, this is a silicone treated baking paper, which I recommend for this, because this is something that doesn't want to release very easily. And even though it's silicone treated, I'm still going to butter the inside of this, because we want a nice smooth release. And the only way to do that is to make sure there's enough lubricant on the outside here. So we're putting the buttered parchment paper inside the buttered triangle mold. Make sure that the paper covers the entire mold. You don't have to worry about shoving it down in the bottom too much, because the filling's going to do that for you. Make sure these ends are buttered too, because otherwise it'll break apart when you try to get it out later. And then you take your mixture and you simply begin filling the mold, of course. And you want to fill it pretty much right to the top level of the metal. Then, when you have it filled like this, nice and evenly, and put the cover on it, I'm going to let this rest. You can let this rest up to overnight if you want to. If you don't have that much time, you can get away with a couple of hours, but it needs to sit there and really form well before you start cooking it. So I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator now for a little while. Another application for this is you can take and butter the inside of a silicone mold. Yeah, I know it's silicone and it should release anyway, but this stuff is pretty damn sticky. Besides, the butter helps give it a better looking golden crust when it's done. Like this. Then you spoon some into each of these, of course. And you could bake this at the same time, or you can bake it separately, whatever you like. Here's what they look like when they come out of the oven. Yeah, these come out pretty easy. You just pop them out like this. Put them on a plate. You know, this can be part of a plating with roast beef. Put a little gravy over the top of it. You know, classic, old school. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.